Whether you're a parent or a Sunday school teacher, the process of discipling children and training them up in the way they should go is hard work. We've all been frustrated. We've all had times when we've been overwhelmed and we don't always do a good job. Sometimes we let our emotions get in the way. But what I want to talk to you about is 4 basic principles of really discipling a child, or even the discipline process, which is aimed at correction, not just punishment. There's 4 basic principles that I want to talk to you about that'll really help you evaluate your own teaching and maybe help you prepare for next time when you have to work with kids. We're going to call them the 4 C's. They're 4 very basic principles of parenting or working with kids in the classroom. And I'm just going to tell you about them this morning. The first one is choices. Every child makes a choice. Sometimes kids want to blame their behavior on somebody else. He made me do it. He called me a name. He hit me first. It's not my fault. He made me do it. Have you ever heard that before? Yeah. So kids are not taking ownership of their own behavior. They're not being responsible for their own choices. And we have to clearly lay out to them, you have a choice. You can obey what God says or you can disobey. The choice is yours. Nobody makes you. Nobody forces your hand. Nobody causes you to sin. You're the one that makes the choice. God says, I set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Choose today. What are you going to do? God always says that to us. I give you a choice. So we have to let kids know they are making a choice. And they have to be responsible for their own choice. Don't let them blame their behavior on somebody else's behavior or actions. The second thing, once we lay out the choices very clearly, we need to identify the consequences. The consequences. What's going to happen if you obey? What's going to happen if you disobey? Usually parents are pretty good, teachers are good about laying out the consequences for a bad choice or bad behavior. We tell them, if you don't do that, this is going to happen to you. And sometimes we get a little extreme, you're not going to have TV for a year, or you're going to have to work and do all your brothers and sisters' chores for a month. We tend to go too big, but we do identify consequences for bad behavior. I think it's just as important for us as parents and teachers to identify the consequences for good behavior, to tell them, if you do what's right, the blessing's going to come to you. I'm going to be able to trust you. You're going to have more privileges and more responsibilities. Here's what's going to happen when you start being the godly person that God created you to be. Obedience brings blessing. We have to make sure that we're spelling out the consequences, both for good and bad behavior, to our kids. Then the third thing, this gets a little tougher now, this is consistency. Oh yeah, I was right. Consistency, it's spelled something like that. Consistency, it means being the same every single time, not changing. One time you're going to say yes, the next time you're going to say no. I gave you my word and I said no, you can't do that, and then you nagged me enough and I change it and I say yes, you can. We have to be consistent. If you say something, mean it. Mean what you say, because kids are really good about finding out whether or not you mean what you say, whether we can believe your word or not. How many times have you said something to your kid, and then after they've nagged you for so long, they come back and nag and nag and nag, and finally you give in? When I was a little kid, we had a dachshund as a pet, and I'm the oldest of 5 kids, and this dog would always come to the table and whine for food, and it would sit up and beg, and my mom would always say, don't feed the dog. Well, we were, once in a while when mom wasn't looking, somebody would slip the dog some food. And my mom would have a fit and, say, don't do that to it. It wasn't consistent. It was every now and then he would get some food. And even after we got pretty trained not to give the dog any food, that dog came back every meal and sat there and begged for the entire meal. Why did he beg? Because he knew this might be the time I get what I want. Not always, But if I'm consistent, if I persevere, I will get what I want. Kids learn in sort of the same way. How many times have you been cooking dinner? You're getting everything ready and your little one says, I want it sweet. I want something sweet, please. And you say, no, nothing before dinner. After dinner, we'll have dessert. And then you continue to cook and they continue to beg. And it gets a little louder and they're, please, Mommy, I'm starving. I need something to eat. Please, just one sweet. No, I told you, you can't have that. You can't eat before dinner. You keep cooking. Now they're pulling on your clothes and they're starting to cry really loud. Please, Mommy, I need something to eat, please. You're saying, no, you can't have anything. And it's like, I want something sweet. I want it now. And what do? You reach and forget something. And you want peace and quiet? But what did you just train them? You trained them that you don't mean what you say. That if they nag you long enough and they persevere, you will not be consistent. You will give in. So parents, teachers, be consistent. Mean what you say. Be careful about what you say. Make sure you lay out the rules and you give them the concept that they will make a choice to obey or disobey. You say, here are the consequences for each of those behaviors, and I will be consistent. I will honor my word, and I'm going to do it every time. You're not going to be able to get me to change my mind. I'm not going to be inconsistent, because you will create more trouble for yourself if you are not consistent, because those kids will come back every time and try to wear you down. This is hardest for young moms, young teachers who just get tired, just get worn out. They're not confident, and so kids are able to really wear them down. The trouble with getting worn down and getting frustrated and letting that build up inside you is the last one, which is learning to be calm. Learning to discipline right away, because you've laid out the choice and the consequence, and you're going to be consistent and say no. And then I'm going to implement the process of discipline very calmly. I'm not going to let things build up inside, because when I do, what comes out of my mouth, out of all the anger and frustration that's built up, what comes out of my mouth is something I'm not proud of, something that's more hurtful, something that I regret. The things that I do, the actions, whether I'm slamming something around or throwing something or spanking, and I spank too hard, now God has to discipline me. And I have to go back and apologize for the words that came out of my mouth or the actions of my hands. And I find myself asking my kid for forgiveness when they were the ones who disobeyed in the first place. It should be them saying sorry to me. But I complicated the issue because I let my emotions get involved, and then I reacted way too big. When I was a kid, being the oldest of five, we would always cause trouble, the five of us getting into fights. And my mom would be so busy with house cleaning or cooking, and she would hear us fighting, and she would yell up to us and say, you better stop that, or I'm going to come up there. And we knew she wasn't going to come up there. She didn't mean what she said. She was not always consistent. And then we'd continue to fight and cause problems, but then the noise would get louder and louder, and then she would, in fact, respond to us even louder, and she was saying, I mean it, I'm going to come up there if you don't stop that. And we'd keep on because we knew she didn't mean it, till finally she got loud. She would scream, I mean it, I'm coming up there, and then boom, she would stomp her foot. When she stomped her foot, we knew, now she means business. See, we waited for her to get to a certain level, a certain pitch, before we knew that she was really going to respond. She wasn't calm when she disciplined us. My dad, on the other hand, was pretty calm. And he would tell us, he would snap his fingers and say, stop. Didn't say much else. Sometimes it was just the snap of the finger and the point. And if we continued the behavior, he didn't say another word. That was your only chance. He was consistent and he was calm. He would walk over and snatch us up, and then we would go and get disciplined. We knew my dad meant what he said, and he was calm, and he didn't overreact. So I'm going to encourage you as a parent or a teacher to think about these 4 C's when you are discipling your children, when you are correcting them. Help them understand that they make a choice. They choose their behavior and their reaction to any situation. That there are consequences, both negative and positive, for their behavior and their choices. And that you will be consistent. You may even have to go back to your kids and say, you know what, I'm really sorry. I have to repent before God. God's really dealing with me. I haven't been consistent. I haven't been doing what God has asked me to do with you. But you know what? Starting today, I've made a commitment to God. I'm going to be consistent. I'm going to mean what I say. And if I say no to you, I mean no. I'm not going to give in. If I say you're going to get a certain consequence for your behavior, I'm going to give it to you. I have to. God's holding me accountable. I need to be consistent. And then I'm going to be calm. Again, you may need to say to your kids, I'm really sorry. I have let my emotions carry me away because I wasn't consistent. I didn't deal with it immediately. I let it build up inside, and then I got really emotional. And starting today, I'm going to be really calm. I'm going to go to God and ask him for his help to discipline you, to disciple you in a way that honors him. I'm going to be calm, and I'm going to implement the consequences that we've talked about. According to your choices and the consequences we've laid out, I'm going to be consistent, and I'm going to do it really calmly because I want you to be the best that God intended for you to be. I want to help him. I want to disciple you, not just change your behavior, but see your heart changed. So teachers, parents, let's take a look at how we're discipling and see where we need to grow.